Hello everybody and welcome to the next lesson. Welcome to day 5. In this exercise we're going to learn a little bit more about shading and highlighting. We already learned how to shade basic forms in a very simple situation, but in most situations the lighting is much more complex and depends on all sorts of factors like how many and what kind of light sources there are in the scene, what kind of materials the objects you're drawing have, what kind of surfaces, and how the light bounces around between objects. So that's quite a lot to learn, but for beginners, we don't need to learn all that. For beginners, it's a very good start to just look at reference images and try to reproduce the major regions of light and the major regions of dark. So that's what we're gonna do in this video. In the first exercise, spend about 15 minutes on it. We're going to start simple and we're going to reproduce these two spheres and we're going to shade them according to the reference. And in the second video, we are going to do something a bit more complicated and we're going to spend about 15 minutes reproducing this hand. We start by identifying and reproducing the basic forms in the image. After that, we draw in some quick finish lines. If you want, you can practice with rough lines first and then draw in the finished lines, but I'm just going to be quick and draw in the finished lines straight away. Then we're going to identify and analyze the regions of light and shadow. And after that, we're going to paint in the shading and the highlighting. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you a nice trick you can do in Krita to use a filter to automatically split a picture into dark, medium and light regions. So if you're on Krita like me, don't forget to check out the last part of the video. So let's go. So without further ado, let's get started. Here we have two reference images I picked to use in day 5 drawing exercises. So the trick is to first try to identify the basic forms and then look at how the light interacts with these forms, this combination of forms. So first of all, we have two spheres. For the purpose of the exercise, I'm just gonna ignore this flower. I'm not really interested in that for now. Let's keep it simple and let's just draw only these spheres. Okay, now I'm also gonna have a bit of a closer look and I see that here it kind of flattens out, so let's make a correction here. Just a minor correction. Let me just first draw the line art. And next, let's add a color layer and pick a base color. Okay, so now that we've got the basic shapes in there, let's study the reference image and draw in the major regions of highlighting and shading. We see that we have a light source coming from there. And then maybe the very brightest part is over here. When we look at the bottom sphere, we see that it's the same over here. But we also have a cast shadow. This white sphere is casting a shadow onto the top sphere. So let's copy that shape. And then let's look at the brightest part. The brightest part is about here. And with that in mind, let's draw the shading and the highlights. As we draw shading and highlighting patterns from reference images, this gives us a lot of practice identifying real-life lighting and shading patterns. So you see, from a combination of understanding basic forms and looking at reference images to see how the lighting and shading plays out, we have already learned quite a lot in this simple situation. Next, let's move on to a bit more complicated situation. Okay, we have a finger pointing straight at the camera. And our brains can see that this is a finger and not a flat circle, because we can see it's actually a cylinder in 3D. So when drawing this, it helps quite a lot to think of these fingers as cylinders rather than as flat shapes. So let's get started. As I mentioned, in this case, it's a good idea to think of each finger as a cylinder. The knuckles, on the other hand, I think of them as spheres. It's a good idea to get some practice eyeballing these basic forms, so that's why I'm going to draw these basic forms next to the reference image. This exercise of drawing the major forms next to the reference image and then later transposing it and checking to see how well you did is the most useful exercise in digital painting. The better you get at doing that, the better you will be at drawing from reference, and also the better you will be at drawing from the imagination on the long run. So let's see how well I did. I think I did pretty well, but one mistake I made is I made the index finger too small, so I'm going to enlarge it a bit. Next, just draw some quick finished lines on it. Because I don't want to spend too much time on it, I'm just gonna omit some details like this ring. Let's just leave it out. Remember, it's only an exercise. So let's patch up these gaps and use the fill tool to add the base color. Add in our basic shadow. I'm just trying to copy what I see in the reference, and hopefully it's going to work out. And let's have a look also at the light region. So we can see that there's a light source over here, the light source over here, and there's a significant source of light coming from this direction too. So let's draw in our highlights accordingly. So that's it. That's some pretty good practice. The main idea is identify the major forms and then have a look at the lighting and copy the lighting. Okay, so next, as I promised, I'm going to show you a nice trickety trick which you can use in Krita to split an image up into 3 regions: light, medium and dark. First, you need to select the layer you want to split up and then go to Filter, Artistic, Index Color. And you can see roughly where the different regions of light and dark are. So what I sometimes like to do is, let me just duplicate this layer, is first I set it to black and white, and then I go to Artistic, Index Colors, and I pick 4 different shades of light at about equal intervals. And I set the steps down to 0. And then it will separate the image into 3 colors: bright, midtone, and dark. It gives me a good idea about which region should be colored and not. In fact, why don't I just export this black and white image too, and I'm going to put it in the resources of the project too. So that's it from me. See you next time. Bye bye.